On the morning of February 5th, a man was walking to his office in downtown Dubai. He never made it. A massive, multi-ton lattice steel structural rig came crashing down across a hyper-dense luxury boulevard, crushing a row of exotic supercars and killing him on the spot. Ground crews saw the catastrophe unfolding in real time. They were screaming at pedestrians, desperately waving traffic back as the heavy infrastructure gave way. But what almost nobody understood that morning was that the entire project had already been pushed into a zone so dangerously unstable, it was vulnerable to a complete, catastrophic failure from the slightest shift in conditions. This is not a freak accident. It is not an act of God, and it is not bad luck. It is a documented, reconstructible chain of corporate decisions that ended with a man dead on a Dubai sidewalk, a record-breaking $272.5 million settlement, and a city scrambling to rewrite its entire engineering rulebook. By the end of this, you will see exactly why the official investigators could never fully agree on who was ultimately to blame. The heavy hardware had been on site for less than a week, brought in for a job that on paper was completely routine. The target was a premier, high-density luxury tower, a hyper-connected commercial hub routing massive amounts of data and power through Business Bay. A megastructure like that runs on immense cooling and electrical loads, and in the blistering desert heat, infrastructure wears out fast. A crew arrived to swap out heavy rooftop cooling units, deploying a massive 565-foot heavy tread crawler rig that towered over the neighborhood. But in Dubai's extreme climate, engineering is a constant battle against the elements. Blinding heat expansion, shifting sand foundations, and sudden, violent desert wind systems. When a winter weather front rolled off the Persian Gulf, the massive steel lattice caught the wind like a massive sail. This is the story of what happens when luxury meets structural failure. The engineering timeline revealed a routine maintenance operation turned into a structural nightmare. The machine brought in for the Business Bay Tower was a massive crawler crane, configured with a 194-foot main boom and a 371-foot luffing jib. Fully extended, this 565-foot steel giant was highly sensitive to aerodynamic forces. In the hyper-dense, high-temperature environment of Dubai, coastal winds tunneling between skyscrapers create unpredictable, high-velocity wind drafts. By Thursday evening, meteorological warnings indicated a severe wind event heading inland from the Arabian Gulf. For a machine of this scale, safety protocol and manufacturer specifications are absolute. The boom must be lowered and completely secured before the weather system hits. It cannot be left standing erect through a storm. Yet, as night fell over the city, the rig remained fully extended into the path of the approaching front. The next morning, the wind arrived with force. Dust and sand swirled through the luxury corridors of downtown Dubai as gusts climbed into the mid-20s. Around 8 a.m., the operator finally began the delicate process of lowering the massive boom to a safe resting angle. In normal conditions, this is a highly controlled, slow mechanical process. But as the crew fanned out to clear pedestrians from the street below, the physical forces acting on the machine reached a critical threshold. At exactly 8:25 a.m., the structure reached its breaking point. The 565-foot steel lattice buckled, tearing away from its orientation and accelerating downward. The impact was catastrophic. The boom slammed across 2 full lanes of traffic, crushing luxury vehicles, rupturing a major water main beneath the boulevard, and severing underground lines. The force was so immense that the heavy counterweighted base of the rig flipped a full 180 degrees, wrenching against its timber cribbing. The onboard computer logged the data instantly. When investigators analyzed the telemetry, they uncovered a terrifying reality. At the moment of failure, the boom sat at 73 degrees and the jib at 51 degrees. In that specific geometric configuration, the wind catching the long metal frame created an unstoppable tipping leverage. Accounting for structural rope stretch, the tipping threshold had dropped to just 4 miles per hour. The massive rig was literally holding itself up by a thread, waiting for a single soft breeze to bring it down. This disaster unmasked a terrifying parallel running straight through Dubai's hyper-paced construction boom. In a city defined by glittering glass facades and record-breaking heights, engineering failures are often buried beneath luxury marketing. But behind the scenes, the fight against nature is relentless. Towering structures built on reclaimed land constantly contend with sinking foundations, coastal water leaks, and extreme heat expansion that causes structural steel to warp and glass panels to suffer catastrophic fatigue. When the federal safety investigators and municipality engineers downloaded the rig's telemetry data, they expected to find a fractured weld or a failed hydraulic line. They found absolutely nothing wrong with the machine itself. The steel was structurally sound. The counterweights were properly balanced. The disaster was caused entirely by a sequence of human choices that ignored the physics of the local climate. The official investigation placed the blame squarely on the operator for failing to stow the rig the night before and lowering the boom at an improper angle into a known wind hazard. The municipality acted aggressively, permanently revoking the operator's heavy machinery credentials and issuing heavy corporate fines. To the public, it was framed as an isolated case of operator error. But when the independent tribunal reviewed the case, a far more complex institutional failure emerged. The tribunal discovered that the site's official safety and stowing blueprint, drafted by the private contracting firms and fully approved by city inspectors, was completely unachievable in the tight, real-world confines of that specific downtown boulevard. The operator had been ordered to follow a safety plan that was physically impossible to execute. A plan that municipal authorities had rubber-stamped without verifying the site's actual physical constraints. If this breakdown is exposing the hidden risks behind these mega projects, take a second to subscribe. We pull back the curtain on the engineering disasters and institutional cover-ups that get a single news cycle and disappear. The finger-pointing between the contractors and the city exposed a systemic vulnerability. Dubai had faced infrastructure scares before, but this collapse forced an immediate, unprecedented shutdown, freezing hundreds of active high-rise projects across the emirate in a single afternoon as the city scrambled to inspect every heavy rig in operation. While the engineers argued over data logs and wind vectors, the human cost of the collapse shattered families across Dubai's diverse expat community. The man killed instantly on that downtown sidewalk was David Wicks, a 38-year-old quantitative analyst. Born in Prague, Wicks had moved to the UAE to join a high-profile financial firm in the city's finance district. He was a man of immense intellect, holding an advanced mathematics degree, and known among his peers not as a cutthroat trader, but as an exceptionally generous individual who quietly funded local charitable initiatives. On that Friday morning, he was simply walking to his office, navigating the familiar luxury corridor, when hundreds of tons of twisted steel dropped from the sky. He never stood a chance. The falling lattice also left several others severely injured, including an expat motorist whose vehicle was flattened as he sat idling in traffic, and a construction worker who was struck by flying debris on a nearby site. A first responder was also hospitalized during the chaotic rescue operation. The immediate aftermath was a scene of sheer terror. Over 140 emergency personnel flooded the Business Bay and downtown sector. A worker in an adjacent tower captured the entire collapse on his smartphone. A harrowing video showing the massive structure tilting, buckling, and slicing through the urban landscape like paper. The impact shattered the windows of a nearby elite academy, forcing an immediate evacuation of hundreds of students. The legal battle that followed was swift and devastating. The lawsuit filed on behalf of the Wicks' family did not target a single entity. It went after the entire development chain. The legal team named the rig's corporate owner, the specialized rigging contractors, the Luxury Towers Management Board, and the municipality itself for systemic oversight failure. The initial claim sought hundreds of millions of dollars in damages for gross negligence. Ultimately, the litigation culminated in a historic, record-breaking settlement of $272.5 million. It stands as the largest construction accident payout in the history of the region. But for a family grieving a brilliant life cut short, the massive financial penalty offered no comfort. It was a staggering sum of money, all traced back to a single mechanical boom lowered at the wrong angle, on a morning when a massive machine should have never been standing in the first place. The legacy of the downtown collapse forced Dubai into an aggressive, sweeping overhaul of its high-rise construction sector. The city realized that its hyper-accelerated growth could no longer rely on self-regulation by private contractors. In an unprecedented move, municipal authorities permanently banned that specific long jib crane configuration from high-density urban streets. Under the new mandates, every heavy rig operating in the emirate must be outfitted with digital anemometers, transmitting real-time wind data directly to a centralized city safety grid. No more guessing about the weather. Every major project now requires a dedicated site lift director whose sole legal responsibility is to monitor climate fluctuations and enforce immediate shutdowns if wind speeds cross dangerous thresholds. Furthermore, strict age limits were placed on heavy machinery, and fines for failing to secure sites were doubled overnight. Yet, as the city's skyline continues to push higher into the desert sky, the underlying vulnerabilities remain. Modern mega towers across the marina and downtown core are packed into tight corridors where thermal expansion stresses structural steel, and coastal moisture continuously challenges deep concrete foundations. Countless luxury units sit empty, investments in a vertical landscape that requires continuous high-risk maintenance just to survive the blistering environment. The $272.5 million settlement closed the legal chapter. But the physical reality stands unchanged. The luxury Business Bay Tower that the rig was servicing that morning still pierces the desert horizon, its massive cooling systems quietly buzzing to keep the servers online and the internet flowing.